This video is showing you how to use the fluke meter, and I started filming this video and it got kind of long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up a little bit so that it's not quite so long. And so this is an introduction. So I'm going to show you, first of all, I'm going to show you all of the controls on the meter. And then I'm going to show you the three individual measurements that you will make with this meter. So the three individual measurements are voltage, amperage, and ohms. And I'll show you how to do the measurements on each one of those. So let's go ahead and get started. So there's three basic measurements that we're going to take with this meter here. The first one is going to be a voltage measurement. Now we've got two different types of voltage. We have alternating current, which is AC, and that is signified by this little V right here, which stands for voltage, and with a little squiggly line above it, which means alternating. And then we have direct current voltage, which is the V right here with the straight lines above it, and that would mean direct current. Now that's the current that we're typically using on an automobile, is direct current. And then we also have up here, we have another scale, which is millivolts. Now millivolts, that is smaller than 1 volt. So that's really tiny voltage, and it's represented by the small m and the V, and that's millivolts DC, which is the straight line up here. Okay, and then as we move around the dial, that's the voltage reading that we're going to be taking. The other reading that we'll be taking is a resistance reading. Resistance is signified by the omega sign, which is this little guy right here. And so when we set our meter up to read resistance, this is the place that we would do that. And then over here, if you follow it over here, you got this little arrow with looks like a little plus sign on it. What this is the diode check. So we won't be doing too much of this in this particular class, but there are other classes that you would use the diode check in it. And then we move over here. The third type of measurement that we would use this meter for is an amperage check. So to measure amps, there's a dual scale here. So this is amperage, which is capital A. That's anything above 1 amp. And then this one here, the small m, and the A, that's milliamps, so that's anything below 1 amp. And then you see you've got the, I'll point with a screwdriver, it might be easier for you to see. The straight lines above it, that means that that's direct current, so that's direct amps, direct current amps. And then if you notice over here on the side, there's a squiggly mark. That stands for AC, but that's a alternate setting, which means that we have to push this yellow button in order to start reading AC amps. So, and then we move along to the last setting on the dial, which is microamps. So this is less than the milliamps. This is microamps. And there again, we have the straight lines up here, which is DC, and then we have the alternate setting, which is the AC. Now, if you notice on the dial, you've got an alternate setting here, which this little symbol right here stands for capacitors. So this is the capacitance setting. And then we also have one over here for temperature. So there's a probe that you can buy that you plug in down here, and you set it to read temperature, and you can use this as a thermometer. Over here, there's another probe that you can buy that will read RPM. And you plug it in down here, and you go to the yellow button, and it activates this, and you can look at RPM on these two scales here. Now there is another white scale that I didn't mention, and that's this one right here. It looks like a sine wave or a megaphone wave or something. This feature has a sound on it, a button or beep, and it's activated with this button right here. So you push this button, and then the meter will beep at you if you have continuity. So that's this dial here. So this is your selector switch. Now if we look down here on the bottom, we've got 4 places that we can plug in meter leads. Anything that you're reading that has to do with voltage, the meter lead is going to be plugged in over here. This one here is the common, so this is the ground. This is going to be common for any amp or any reading that you use the meter on. So your ground always goes here, so this is the black wire. If you're reading voltage, you plug it in over here. If you're reading amperage, you plug it in over here. If you're reading milli or microamps, you plug it in here. These two right here are fused. They're protected by a fuse. This one over here, if you look at this little line that goes over, it's fused at 10 amps. So if you read anything over 10 amps, you could blow that fuse. This one right here is fused at 400 milliamps. So it's fused at less than about a half an amp is what it's fused at. So, and there's a fuse there. These fuses inside these meters, they cost about $20 a piece. So if you accidentally blow a fuse, it costs $20 to replace it. So keep that in mind as we move along through the quarter and we start using these meters. So that's down here. The other thing I wanted to point out down here is this little, and you probably can't read it on the video, but right down here it says CAT, C-A-T, 123 is Roman numeral 3. So CAT 3, 1000 volts. And then it has here CAT 4, 600 volts. What this means is this is the voltage rating that this is safe to use on. This is important because if you start working on a hybrid vehicle, some hybrid vehicles get upwards of 800-900 volts. So you need to have at least a CAT 3 meter. CAT 4 would be okay up to 600 volts, but a CAT 3 is the one you actually, I mean, that's the best one right there. So any meter that is rated at CAT 3 is going to be a good one to use in automotive. One of the things that makes it a CAT 3 is this is the meter lead that plugs into these banana plugs right here. And if you notice how long this insulator is. If you look inside here, the banana clip is actually sunken in down there a little ways. On a meter that's less than CAT 3, this insulator right here will be rather short and you'll actually see the banana plug sticking out of the bottom of it. What that does, it just creates a higher resistance for voltage to travel through, so you have much less chance of being shocked with using CAT 3 meter leads. Now the meter leads are also going to be labeled, whether or not they're CAT 3. If I can see it, you really can't see it on this one, but it's labeled right here. There's CAT 3, 1000 volts, CAT 4, 600 volts. And it's actually printed right there on the meter lead. So if you have a CAT 3 meter, make sure the meter leads you're using are also CAT 3. So that does it for this down here, and that's the dial that we've talked about. So now let's talk about these buttons up here. This button right here is a light. So if we turn on the meter, we want to see that dial a little bit better. All we have to do is push this button here, and I don't know whether you can see it on the meter or not, but there is a light that turned on. You can see it kind of over here in this corner, and then I can turn it off. You might be able to see it turn off. There it goes, turned off, and then turn it back on. So if you're using this in a dark environment, you can turn on that light to be able to see your display. So that's what that button is. And it looks like it has two different intensities on there. So you can hit it one time it's low, second time it's high, third time it's off. This one here is your beeper. So this is your, and it's also min-max. Or sorry, the min-max is up here. This is your beeper. So you hit this button, and what's going to happen once this is activated, then when your meter leads see continuity, it'll beep. And I'll demonstrate how that works. So if I plug in some meter leads down here, if I take my meter leads and if I have that trigger, whoops. Sorry, got to put it on the right setting in order to do this. So now anytime I touch anything that has continuity, I don't have to look at the meter to know that it has continuity. So for instance, if I take, this, I've got a metal screwdriver right here. If I take the meter and put my meter leads on the metal screwdriver, see I've got continuity. If I want to check a wire, then I can do the same thing. So that's what this button is right here. And this one here is relative versus actual reading. So that's what this button is here. We're not going to be using this button too much in this class. And then this button over here is hertz. We won't be using this too much in this class, but in later classes, this is an important button here because this measures in cycles per second. So there's a lot of the sensors, well, a few of the sensors and stuff on the vehicle that actually measure in hertz. So this would be a good button to use on that. It also will give you a percentage. So if you're looking to at a percentage, that's what it reads in hertz and percentage. And then this one here is an auto hold. So when you turn on the meter, this is what they call an auto ranging meter. So see that little decimal there? It will automatically go to the correct place for whatever circuit you're reading. But you can actually you can hold it. So in other words, you can put that button right there and you see the A hold there. So that right there will hold it from auto ranging. So it'll stay in that one place. If you want to change the range that you're in, that's the next button here, this range button. So if I push that, you see it's moved it over, and it moved it over again, and then I push it again, and it shows up over here. So each time I push it, it moves the button, or moves the decimal one space over to the right. And anytime you want to get out of these special functions, all you have to do is turn the meter off, turn it back on, everything goes away, it goes back to the way it was. So if you look at this, and this will also tell you what scale you're reading. So this is 1000, manual 1000. This is 6. I got to almost have to turn on the light in order to see it. So that's 6. Whoops. Let me get out of that. I pushed the wrong button. So that's the manual 6, and then we got 600, 1000, and then back to 6. So what that means is anything less than 1 volt, it's gonna choose this range, and then the next one is anything over 1 volt is this range, and then this one here is anything over 100 volts, I think it is, or something like that. Goes up to this range. So usually what I do when I'm using this meter is I'll just, if the auto range isn't working or isn't getting the reading that I want, or I'm not seeing what I want to see, I just hit the range button until the decimal moves into a place where I can actually get a good reading on here. And then this next button here is the min-max. And what that does is it measures the lowest voltage and the highest voltage and then the average. So I'll give you an example. We'll put it on ohms, and then I'll take my meter lead right here, and when I hit the min-max, you see the little min-max sign shows up there, and then I touch the meter leads. Every time it beeps, it takes a new reading. If you notice, it's not beeping now, and that's because it's already taken the reading. Now if I want to go back and look at that, all I have to do is hit the button, and that's your maximum reading, which was out of limits. Here's your minimum reading, which is 0 ohms, and here's your average reading. So it would be 1.8 mega ohms. That's the great big M over there, mega ohms. So that's your average. And then you hit it one more time, and you go back to the maximum. There's your maximum, there's your minimum, there's your average. Now, if I want to use any of these yellow scales, what I have to do is, so I'm on the ohms right here. If I hit this yellow button, what that's going to do is it's going to put me into capacitors. So there's the farads. So capacitors are rated in farads. So right now it's in nanofarads. And there's microfarads. And I think that's all it's going to read, is nano and micro. So those are the scales there. So right now this is set up to read capacitors. So to get out of that, all I have to do is turn it off and then turn it back on, and if you notice, the farad sign is gone. There's a couple other features I wanted to show you on the dial. You see this scale on the bottom? That's a running scale, a bar scale, which makes it easy to read on some circumstances. So that's something you can look at in some circumstances. So what I want to do now